And when you find the time, I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch!
The early 80s marked a fascinating turning point in horror cinema. While slashers dominated the box office, something far more insidious was brewing in Hollywood. A film that would redefine what practical effects could accomplish, only to be buried by the feel-good blockbuster wave of 1982. Imagine walking into a theater, expecting another monster movie, only to witness the most groundbreaking creature effects ever put to film. Effects that even by today's CGI standards remain unmatched. A film so ahead of its time that audiences in 1982 weren't ready for its nihilistic vision of paranoia and isolation. Welcome to Past America, and we're diving deep into John Carpenter's The Thing, a masterpiece that died at the box office but rose from the frozen depths to become one of the most influential horror films ever made. Let the autopsy begin. When The Thing hit theaters in June 1982, it was up against an unstoppable force, Steven Spielberg's E.T., the extraterrestrial. One alien wanted to phone home. The other wanted to become home. Guess which one 1982 audiences preferred? Universal Pictures had given Carpenter a massive $15 million budget, more than triple his Halloween budget. They expected another commercial hit. What they got instead was a dark, paranoid nightmare that would take decades to be recognized for what it truly was: a masterpiece of horror, practical effects, and psychological terror. But before we unravel why The Thing initially failed, only to rise again as a celebrated classic, we need to understand just what made this film so revolutionary in the first place. And trust me, once you see how deep this rabbit hole goes, you'll never look at a blood test the same way again. When Universal handed John Carpenter $15 million to remake the 1951 classic The Thing from Another World, they were betting on the director of Halloween to deliver another commercial hit. What they didn't expect was that Carpenter, along with a 22-year-old effects prodigy named Rob Bottin, would push the boundaries of practical effects beyond anything cinema had seen before. Bottin and his team worked for months, often sleeping in the studio, creating nightmarish creatures that could transform on screen. No camera tricks, no quick cuts, just pure practical effects that had to work in front of the camera. The dedication was so intense that Bottin eventually checked himself into a hospital from exhaustion after the shoot. But the ambitious effects were just part of the story. Carpenter insisted on shooting the film in chronological order, a rare luxury that helped build genuine tension among the cast. The freezing conditions at Universal's refrigerated stage and various locations in Alaska and British Columbia weren't just for show. The cast was genuinely cold, adding to their increasingly paranoid performances. The film's production came at a fascinating crossroads in Hollywood. While most sci-fi was following Star Wars into space opera territory, Carpenter went darker. He returned to the original John W. Campbell Jr. novella, Who Goes There, rather than the 1951 film, embracing its themes of paranoia and isolation. This wasn't going to be your typical monster movie. This was psychological horror with tentacles. Even the legendary Ennio Morricone's score defied expectations. Instead of his signature sweeping themes, he delivered a minimalist, pulsing soundtrack that matched Carpenter's own musical style. The result was claustrophobic, tense, and unlike anything else in theaters. But all this innovation came at a price. As the budget crept up and the shooting schedule extended, Universal grew nervous. They had signed up for a horror film and were getting something far more complex and challenging. Little did they know they were financing what would become one of the most influential films in horror history. The stage was set for something revolutionary. The only question was, would audiences in the summer of 1982 be ready for it? Dramatic pause. they weren't. But we'll get to that. Want to learn how advanced these effects really were? Stay tuned as we dive into the technical achievements that still leave modern filmmakers scratching their heads. Let's talk about what makes The Thing a technical masterpiece, and why modern filmmakers still study it frame by frame. In an era before CGI, every single transformation had to work in camera. Every tentacle, every split face, every twisted body, all practical effects that had to perform live on set. The blood test scene alone is a masterclass in tension and practical effects. A simple copper wire, heated and dragged through fake blood-filled petri dishes, created one of cinema's most memorable moments. That scene alone took weeks to perfect, with Botton's team testing countless chemical combinations to get the blood simulation just right. But it wasn't just the creature effects that broke new ground. Cinematographer Dean Cundey, who would later shoot Jurassic Park, brought a distinctive visual style that emphasized isolation. The way he lit the Antarctic exterior shots, with that endless white horizon meeting dark skies, made the research station feel like the last outpost of humanity. What many people don't realize is that Carpenter and Cundey developed a subtle technique for showing who might be infected. Watch the eyes. When a character is human, you can see a glint of light in their eyes. When they're not, that light is mysteriously absent. It's the kind of detail that rewards multiple viewings. Even the way violence was depicted was revolutionary. Unlike the slasher films of the era, each transformation was treated like a magic trick. Carpenter would show you everything, holding shots longer than comfortable, forcing you to confront these impossible transformations in excruciating detail. There's no cutting away, no convenient shadows, just pure, unflinching horror. The sound design deserves special mention. Every squelch, every crack of transforming bone, every inhuman screech was carefully crafted. The sound team created these effects using everything from stretched condoms to crushed celery. The result? A sonic landscape that makes your skin crawl even when you're not looking at the screen. All these elements came together to create something unprecedented, a horror film that didn't just shock, but convinced. Even today, in our CGI-saturated world, The Thing's effects hold up because they were real. They existed in physical space, reflecting real light, casting real shadows. But here's the truly mind-bending part. Some of the film's most infamous scenes, like the head spider transformation, were shot in broad daylight. Think about that. These effects were so confident, so well executed, they didn't need the crutch of darkness to hide their seams. Coming up next, we'll look at the performances that brought humanity to this inhuman story, and how an ensemble cast created one of the most perfectly paranoid atmospheres in cinema history. At the center of The Thing's frozen hell stands Kurt Russell's MacReady, not your typical hero. No dramatic speeches, no last-minute revelations of hidden skills. Just a helicopter pilot who's good at chess, likes his scotch, and happens to be really good at staying alive. Russell perfectly embodies that thin line between leadership and suspicion that drives the film's tension. But here's what makes The Thing special. Every single character matters. There's no disposable crew member, no obvious next victim. Keith David's Childs brings a simmering intensity that matches Russell's calculated cool. Wilford Brimley transforms from the friendly Dr. Blair to a man driven to destruction by terrible knowledge. Each performance adds another layer to the paranoia. What's fascinating is how Carpenter directed these performances. He had the cast play their scenes two ways. One version where they were human, another where they were the Thing trying to act human. But here's the kicker. He never told the other actors which version their scene partner was playing. The suspicion you see on screen, that's real. Watch David Warner's scene as Clark, the dog handler. Every gesture, every glance carries double meaning. Is he protecting the dogs because he cares for them, or because one of them is the Thing? The genius is, both readings work perfectly. That's not just good acting, that's psychological warfare through performance. The cast spent weeks together in freezing conditions, creating a genuine sense of isolation. They weren't just acting cold, they were cold. They weren't just playing paranoid. After weeks of shooting scenes where anyone could be the monster, that paranoia became real. But perhaps the most brilliant performance in the film is one that's never seen. The thing itself. Every character it imitates moves differently, speaks differently. It's not just a shapeshifter. It's an actor playing other actors playing their characters. It's the kind of layered performance that would be impossible with CGI. This combination of stellar performances and genuine conditions created something rare in horror. Characters you actually care about. When the paranoia hits, when the accusations start flying, when the blood test begins, you're invested in every single person in that room. Up next, we'll explore how these performances, combined with groundbreaking effects and masterful direction, influenced an entire generation of filmmakers, and why it took almost 2 decades for audiences to catch up to what Carpenter had created. When we talk about The Thing's influence, we're not just talking about horror movies. We're talking about a fundamental shift in how films approach practical effects, paranoia, and the concept of the hidden enemy. Modern classics, like Annihilation and It Follows, owe a massive debt to what Carpenter achieved in 1982. Let's put this in perspective. James Cameron studied The Thing's effects while developing Aliens. Guillermo del Toro considers it a perfect film. Stranger Things constantly references it. Even video games like Dead Space and Among Us trace their DNA back to this frozen outpost of paranoia. But the film's true legacy isn't just its creature effects. It's how it changed storytelling in genre films. Before The Thing, horror movies typically showed you who the monster was. After The Thing, the question of who's real became a genre unto itself. What's remarkable is how the film grows more relevant with time. In an era of increasing isolation and distrust, The Thing's themes of paranoia and invisible threats hit harder than ever. Its questions about human nature and identity feel more pressing now than they did in 1982. The film's famous ambiguous ending, that final scene between MacReady and Childs, has launched decades of debate. Carpenter didn't just leave the ending unclear. He created a puzzle that viewers are still trying to solve 40 years later. Every rewatch reveals new clues, new theories, new possibilities. Modern filmmakers have largely abandoned practical effects for CGI, making The Thing's achievements even more impressive. Watch any behind-the-scenes footage and you'll see why. The level of craftsmanship, the attention to detail, the pure artistic commitment, it's something we might never see again. But perhaps the most significant part of The Thing's legacy is how it proved that commercial failure doesn't equal artistic failure. It showed that sometimes the most important films are the ones that audiences aren't ready for. The ones that challenge, disturb, and redefine what's possible. Next up, we'll break down exactly why this film works so perfectly, and how its various elements come together to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Why it works. Here's the thing about The Thing. It's not just a horror movie that happens to be well made. It's a perfect storm where every element amplifies every other element. Let's dissect why this machine runs so flawlessly. First, there's the setting. That Antarctic research station isn't just a location, it's practically a character. The isolation isn't just physical, it's psychological. No phones, no internet, no backup. Just endless white nothing in every direction. Even if you survive The Thing, where do you go? The environment itself is trying to kill you. Then there's the structure. Carpenter doesn't waste time with backstory or exposition. We're dropped right into the action with that Norwegian helicopter chasing a dog. From there, it's a perfect downward spiral. Each discovery leads to a worse one. Each solution creates new problems. It's like watching a cosmic horror escape room in reverse. But what really makes The Thing tick is its pacing. Notice how Carpenter alternates between two types of horror. the explosive body horror of the transformation scenes, and the slow burn paranoia of the human moments. It's like a twisted dance between chaos and tension. Just when you think you can breathe, something explodes into tentacles. The film also works because it respects its audience's intelligence. No character does anything stupid just to move the plot forward. Every decision, even the wrong ones, makes perfect sense in the moment. These are smart people making smart choices in an impossible situation. What's fascinating is how the film strips away everything we use to trust each other. Body language? The Thing can copy that. Memories? It absorbs those too. Even basic human reactions can't be trusted. When Palmer sees Norris's head sprout legs and walk away, his delayed reaction suddenly makes perfect sense on repeat viewings. He's not human anymore. This brings us to the masterstroke. The film never tells us who was infected when. Every viewing can support a different theory. Just like the characters, we're forced to question everything we think we know. That's not just good horror. That's psychological warfare against the audience. Up next, we'll explore how this masterpiece has impacted our culture and why its themes resonate even stronger today than they did in 1982. Cultural impact. 1982's audiences might have rejected The Thing, but culture has a funny way of correcting its mistakes. What started as a box office bomb has infected every corner of popular media, from art to memes, from academic studies to scientific discussions about alien life. Think about it. When NASA scientists discuss protocols for potential alien contact, they reference The Thing. When epidemiologists talk about containment protocols, The Thing comes up. The film has transcended its genre to become part of our cultural vocabulary for discussing isolation, paranoia, and contamination. On the internet, The Thing has found an even bigger life. That blood test scene has been recreated in countless parodies. MacReady's famous line, "Nobody trusts anybody now," has become shorthand for social commentary. Even the way we talk about imposter scenarios in games like Among Us borrows directly from The Thing's playbook. But here's where it gets interesting. Each decade seems to find new relevance in the film. In the 80s, it was about the Cold War. In the 90s, it was about identity. Post 9/11, it was about terror within. During the pandemic, it became about isolation and invisible threats. The Thing keeps transforming, just like its monster. Art galleries now host exhibitions dedicated to the film's imagery. Rob Bottin's creature designs have influenced everything from album covers to fashion. Even the way the film uses body horror has been dissected in gender studies and philosophical papers. Not bad for a movie that critics originally dismissed as instant junk. What's most remarkable is how The Thing has influenced our trust in visual effects. In an age where CGI can show us anything, audiences increasingly crave the tactile reality of practical effects. When modern filmmakers want to prove their practical effects credentials, they don't just reference The Thing, they try to recreate its techniques. The film's reputation has grown so much that its initial failure has become part of its mythology. It's not just a great movie anymore. It's a testament to the idea that true art finds its audience eventually, even if it takes decades. The Thing isn't just a movie ahead of its time. It's a film that keeps finding new ways to be relevant. From its practical effects to its themes of isolation, Carpenter's Frozen Nightmare continues to inspire filmmakers and haunt audiences today. If you enjoyed diving into this frozen horror, hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into cinema's greatest gems. What's your favorite scene from The Thing? Let us know in the comments below.